As you can see, fall is here. It is finally cool enough for me to wear a jacket. And it is a dull haze as far as the eye can see. So I figured I would just walk around the trees and stuff. And we don't have a lot of leaf change yet, but you can see a little bit of it in the trees and the people's yards and stuff around here. It's getting there. It's getting there. So I want to talk about this thing that's been on my mind. As many of you know, about 3 days a week I come stay with my mother because she's really old and her husband's dying. So I help them with chores and stuff. Well, it's been frustrating dealing with how awful things are. Like how anti-white and anti-male everybody that you deal with in the healthcare industry is. How miserably incompetent and seemingly designed to not help you everything with health insurance is. And I'm having to help them deal with all of that because, I mean, God help them if they didn't have me to help them talk to people and, you know, set up appointments and make sure things are the way they need to be with the fine print and shit like that. It'd be a nightmare. But that's not what I want to talk about. I'm just sort of setting the stage for what I'm talking about. So, my mother's husband is in and out of the hospital. He's got a lot of chronic problems. No need to go into details, but just, you know, stuff. Well, he feels like he's near the end, which he very well might be. And so we had a talk. And he talked about how he misses how things used to be. And that's not exactly a profound topic of conversation because everyone in our dissident circles has similar talking points. But it made me think. It made me think about how our civilization is collapsing. Because everyone I speak to, whether he's 25 years old or 55 years old, likes older things. The 25-year-olds that I talk to in my various social online groups, they like older movies, older video games, the way society was structured before they were born, before even I was born. It's very telling that everyone of every age that I am able to speak with thinks that everything was better in the before time. I think that that is a very unhealthy, unpleasant place for a society, a civilization to be at. To be in, excuse me. Because everything that I think of that makes me happy isn't new. Every month, I try to sample new things. I look at trailers for new video games. I look at trailers for new movies and I check out new TV shows a little bit with my husband. Sometimes I check out new things like new documentaries, and they're not as good as the ones that I watched made in the 90s and the aughts. Sometimes they're not as good as the ones made 50 or 60 years ago. I try listening to nature and science shows because that's stuff that I used to like. Now, say what you want about people like David Attenborough and Carl Sagan and, like, you know, pie in the sky liberal dreamer guys, right? Say what you want about them and their philosophies. But at least their content when it came to science and thinking about man's place in the natural order and stuff, at least it was fairly based in reality, right? But I try listening to stuff now made by contemporaries. Like like space and cosmic stuff, like Eon PBS. And some of the content's okay. But when I read about the people who make this content, they're like super duper atheist, anti-white, anti-male, hyper shit libs. And then you look at the people who fund it. It's just a giant pile of the same anti-white lib shits. Okay, fine. And I'll try to sample other kinds of media. Like, what's a good example? Shows about like stuff my husband likes. It shows about technical things. He likes watching documentaries about cooking and building stuff in the 17 and 1800s. He likes watching not really documentaries, but like breakdowns of how does these machining tools work to make this kind of industry. And when he shows me that stuff seems to be entirely made by hashtag our guys. It's like, you know, spurgy, aspy, responsible white dudes that have worked in industries and know about tools and know about niche white dude hobbies like collecting trains and tanks and airplanes and ships and stuff like that. And that content feels just as good as stuff that was made 50 years ago. And so it's a very stark contrast of things that are made by my people for my people, and then things that aren't, which aren't. And so what's weird is so much of the content that clearly isn't good for me, isn't made for me, doesn't want me, maybe even hates me, is largely operated, designed by, and delivered by white people. Because I don't like watching stuff that's full of nons. I just can't make myself do it. No offense to nons out there, but it's just I have really bad non-fatigue after paying attention to things the last 10 years. And I hate how shows and games and commercials and everything just full on white erasure. So if something has, like, you know, like a non-support character, I'll consider it. But like things that are like, you know, the kind of casting I'm talking about, I just refuse. I just don't even watch it. So the stuff that I'm talking about is still, you know, predominantly made by, starring, and presumably presented for white folks. So I've tried some things lately, and I talked to we're wrapping this back up to my mother's dying husband. So I started talking to him about, well, you know, I noticed that you watch, you know, this kind of racing. You like, you know, European international bicycling competitions. He was big into sports when he was younger, so he likes following all the Olympic stuff and all that. And I said, I noticed that you haven't really been doing that much in the last couple of years. You've just been reading fantasy novels and you've been watching old movies. And even him, and this is the guy that I've told you before, hates politics. He is of German descent from Minnesota, and he is one of the most milquetoast, easy, simple, I don't have strong opinions guys that I have ever met. He has very temperate mood, and he doesn't like to get involved or have strong opinions on race or politics or religion or anything. And when I asked him those questions, he sort of balked at first. And he said, because I feel like none of it's for us anymore. And I said, us? What do you mean? And he was quiet for a moment, and he says, you know what I mean. And that hit me really hard. Because he knows. I wonder how long he's known. And just didn't say anything. And so, I feel like we dance with ghosts of the past. Because being haunted by them is better company than the poison they try to feed us today. Because, no offense to women, but I don't think that women should predominantly be encouraged to or hold positions of power over society. And that's where we're at now. We have non-white, non-Christian, non-Western, influential ethnic groups, whether they're Zionist and Jewish, whether they are some kind of Muslim, whether they are some kind of Hindu, or whether they're atheists and there's some kind of Asian, like a Chinese or something else, that is trying to muscle into our civilization and get whatever it is they want to get, right? I'm not pointing the finger at the Jays this time, but like, we have all of those things going on. And for the last 100 years, we have had a worsening situation of awful, awful policies being made by awful people to empower awful people. Let's just leave it at that for now, for this conversation. And so, Even though, if you dial it back 50, 60, 70 years, we were already in this capitalist, materialist hellscape of modernity. Because you go back to the 1950s, it is not the idyllic 1950s. That was well, for lack of a better term, that was the communism designed to sell to Americans. Every man king of his own castle. Get in your little box. Stay in your little this. Go to work, 5, 6 days a week. Work your ass off. Have 2.3 kids. Have a dog. Do all of this exactly the way that you're supposed to. Consume product and prepare for a second product. Die on schedule. It's not exactly Marxist communism, is it? But you see the allegory I'm making there, right? So we already had problems back then. But we were still ethnically, racially, mostly homogenous. And we still had men in power. Men, not women. Men in power who were predominantly of our ethnic fabric, let's say. And let's not forget, who at least had to act like they had some kind of moral compass, and we all shared some kind of moral fabric, right? Well, that's not how we live today, is it? It's not. We know that the men and women in charge today are rotten. They have no pretense at all about pretending that they give a shit about our moral order, which, whether you like it or not, has been a Christian framework. They don't care. Because our government is full of foreigners. Muslims, Jews, Hindus, atheists, sickening, fucked up kinds of non-Christians that still say they are. And, of course, the usual psychopathic liars that make their way up in the bureaucracy. Well, that's who's been in charge. And then you have all this anti-male, anti-white cancer that has been taught to us for the last 50 or 60 years, enshrined in television, enshrined by preachers, enshrined by educators. And so you have this never settling storm of white guilt and misplaced masculine energy and falsely empowered femininity and all of these other issues that are just this never-ending cacophony of internal miserable problems for white people. And all of that now is echoed. It's all echoed to us now through advertisement, through popular music, through commercials, through ads in magazines, through television, through movies, even through sports. And people can't help but notice that. And my mother's sick, dying husband was finally able to say it because he was just so sick of everything that he could try to do in his messed up condition with his phone or with the remote in his hand. It just wasn't for him anymore. So he just sort of stopped. And he just reads novels and looks at old D&D books from 50 years ago. And he likes to talk about religion and God and stuff. And his Christian visitors, they'll talk about Lutheranism and, he's just sort of completely detached from entertainment and cable and stuff. And, for like an old, he's a young boomer or an old Gen Xer, depending on how you want to look at it with his age. But for somebody old and tepid like him, someone who genuinely doesn't have a hateful bone in his body and who wants to believe in the liberal order lies of the anti-white narrative, he's broken. He feels abandoned, punished, shunned, used up and discarded by a society that lied to him and used him. And I sat and talked to him about it for about an hour. And we came to the conclusion that nothing is for us anymore. And that people realize that. And that's a very unstable place to be as a society. Is when everyone of merit, morality, strength realizes that nothing about the government or the status quo is for him anymore. That's a very unstable, dangerous place to be. And so, to use a metaphor that I came up with earlier, we realize that these men who dance with ghosts of the past will be influenced by them. And the ghosts of the past want blood, conflict. They want revolution. They want men's heads on spikes. They want traitors to hang. And they want a people who will celebrate them for those actions. And keep in mind, this was a discussion with the man who has gone out of his way his whole life to never have a hurtful, strong opinion, to never care about politics, to take as even-keeled and simple and righteous as a Lutheran Christian man as he can, to have an even-keeled stance on everything. And I had this conversation with him, and it makes me think, how long? How long will we endure this unpleasant, anesthetizing nightmare that we're stuck in before the powerful and masculine men of our race violently wake up from that dream, from that nightmare, and say, this is enough. We're fixing this. And I wonder, what will it be like when that happens? How bad will it be? And I think when that time comes, everyone like me and you, who grew up in the cusp of this civilizational eclipse, we will be the ghosts of the past then. Because when that happens, everything from the before time will be severed. And there will be a new Genesis, a new creation myth, a new origin story for whatever country or countries we have going forward after the ones we have now collapse from civil war, infighting, economic collapse, and things like that. And I think to myself, will I even be alive to see it start? Will I be alive to see it finish? I don't know. But I already can tell you that I feel like a ghost of the past already. Growing up in backwards, middle of nowhere, East Tennessee, it feels 40 or 50 years behind shit here already, which is good. I like that. It's still, pretty good out here. So I wonder about the future and what's going to happen. I wonder about where we will be as a people, as a folk, when I am old and dying 40 or 50 years from now. But I don't think that the society that we have will be anywhere recognizable to how things were socially when I grew up in the 80s. To how when my parents, my living parent and her husband grew up in the 60s. I just don't think that, I don't think things will be recognizable. Because how could they be? There's no more fabric that we share. There's no more skein through which most Americans or most British or most French experience life together. We've all been atomized and fractured and deracinated to the point to where what do we even have that gives us any identity or shared culture at all together anymore? Just the ghosts of the past. The music, movies, scripture, doctrine, politics, warfare of the past. Those are the things that we have as cultural identities touchstones. Things in modernity aren't those. Have you noticed that? I have. And so it makes me wonder what's coming. And it makes me sad that everything that I knew and everything that has given me identity, both positive and negative, and all of the people that shaped the culture that I live in, the laws, everything that has to do with how I grew up and the view that I have about how life should be. It was a mix of lies, propaganda, cope, and like always, naked power. And that naked power did not have my best interest or my people's best interest at heart when it shaped all this stuff 20, 30, 40, 50, 80 years ago. It's just been worse and worse since at least 100 years ago, maybe even before then. So I wonder, when do I join the ranks of ghosts of the past? Am I already? The way I live out here in East Tennessee, the Zoomers I talk to act like it's already like a fairy tale where they're from. Am I a relic of the past already? Maybe so. I don't know where it's all going. But I hope that I live to see the white man reclaim what's his. I hope that I live to see at least the start of whatever crusade, revolution, healing, reclamation. I don't necessarily want it to be bloody and violent. I just think it will be. That's what history tells us. I hope it isn't, but I hope that I live to see it at least start. So then maybe, before I die, this old ghost can dance with people before I head off across that eternal ocean. I hope you've enjoyed listening to me today, and I hope you have a good week. I want you to remember, we can win and we can have a future worth living. But we're all going to go through some hard times as things get worse. Build family, build friendships, prepare yourself with skills, abilities, network of connections that you will need in harder times. And if you have children, teach them those skills too. They'll need them. I'll see you next Monday night for more Discordant Dragons. Have a great week, everybody. God bless.